time we spoke about VPNs, and we want to continue down that. And we want to talk about your next lab, which is a VPN project where you're going to create your own VPN server for free and in Amazon Web Services, and you're going to connect to it on your PC or laptop as well as your mobile phone. This is a functional VPN that you can use, and you can connect to it anytime that you want to hide your location or hide your data stream from those eyes that want to capture your traffic, such as Google or Comcast or whoever else you're working through. All right. It also makes you secure if you're in some type of non-password protected wireless access point or WAP at some type of location or public location, be it a library, McDonald's, Starbucks, whatever. Okay. So let's jump into this and let's go into display my screen here. All right. All right, so first, I want to go over the document that is posted here. Okay. So March 22nd through March 28th, this week here. All right, we want to talk about, and we'll continue to talk about this VPN. So as you're working on this, start working on this, and you can work in your groups. Ultimately, each of you will turn in your own individual lab, but you can work in groups to help you figure this out and help solve this. That's the best way to work to get these done. But each of you will ultimately need to set it up on your own PC and laptop and then get it working. And so we have both this VPN server here. This will be due not this Thursday, but the following Thursday. So like a week and a half. Should be April 1st. All right. So that will provide you a week and a half to pull this together. And that should be plenty of time. And we will answer questions as we go along. And this also gives us a little bit longer time to do this for those this weekend who are going to be part of the Pacific Rim Collegiate Cyber Defense Competition, PRCCDC, Friday and Saturday. Oh, and part day Sunday for the job fair. It's a virtual job, I guess job fair. Okay, so we've got that. If we go back to where we were, I have an Openvpn project document. Okay, right up above where you will upload your document. Your document will include, it'll just be a Word doc, and you will take a screenshot of your laptop or PC showing connected to your Openvpn server in Amazon Web Services. Your phone, you can do a quick, you know how you push the two buttons on the side and make a connection, right? And you can snap a photo of your screen with OpenVPN, and
Mark?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Yeah,
You went silent.
yeah,
I thought you froze.
yeah, I was looking at my open. Okay, right. I have a Openvpn client, and okay, here's my Openvpn client.
It's just showing us Moodle, sir.
Oh, I should stop sharing. Now you can see it, right? So this is they've improved it a little bit, but when you go into settings, all right, you've got different settings for this, and yeah, so Openvpn client, it's going to look like that's our little logo with the orange, like a little light bulb or something. And when you go into it, it comes in, and you have either a import, you can import it from a URL, or you can import from a file, all right? And you can use iTunes Sync, or I'll give you another method, but basically what happens is you will create your Amazon Web Services VM with Ubuntu server. And with that Ubuntu server, once it's complete, it has a configuration file with the hashed password for the login details. And that file just needs to be downloaded from your Ubuntu server. And there's various ways to do that, but once you can get it to your phone and to your laptop, you install those clients and add that configuration file, and voila, you connect. Now, let's walk through all the elements that are required for this. Let's see, did you start the recording, Peter?
Yep. You're recording now.
Oh, it is recording, yeah. Okay, so let me share my screen. And thank you for telling me when I wasn't sharing, when I was just sharing my screen. All right, so I want to go in here, go into a whiteboard, okay. Right. So what happens is when you create your VPN, oops. So in Amazon Web Services, you're going to create this Ubuntu server. Ubuntu, that's an N in there. Missing my N. Ubuntu server. And it can be 16.04, 18.04, 20.04. So you've got this server here, and in it, there are a number of elements that have to be done. Now, it could be two servers. You can create two servers. All right. And this would be your certificate authority, which is CA. Okay. And this would be your VPN server over here. Now, you can have two servers, or you can put these both on the same server. All right. If you put these both on the same server, then just be aware of that, for example, your certificate authority here generates a certificate for asymmetric encryption for your VPN tunnel. All right. And so when you are connecting to your laptop, okay, or your mobile phone, okay, that's a mobile phone, okay. You are going to have a firewall here in Amazon Web Services. All right. So the elements here that have to come into play is that you have specific ports that have to be allowed. Now, by default, all traffic is allowed outbound, okay? But it blocks everything by default inbound into the firewall, okay? Coming in from external. So what you have to do then is you have to open up ports, okay, inbound and typically it is UDP 1194. But you don't have to use that port. Okay, remember you are the network engineer setting this up. And when you do the configuration with Openvpn, you can change that port. You can change it to 443, for example, or whatever port you want. It can be TCP or UDP. These ports can be either, but you have to specify. And whatever you specify in your OpenVPN server, it's just got to be the same thing that you specify in the firewall for Amazon Web Services. All right. So that makes sense, of course, but just make sure you're aware of that. Also, you have another element on each of you have on your laptop. If it's Windows, okay, you have Windows Defender. That is your firewall on your operating system. So the Windows operating system has its own firewall built into Windows. And that can be a problem as well. You have to go in, and I believe they've improved the client so that when you install the client, it also says, hey, make changes to the firewall, and it does that automatically so that Windows Defender allows those ports and allows OpenVPN traffic to come in to your laptop. All right, so there's the firewall issues. All right, so one, there is the VPN server and the certificate authority server, the CA server, okay? Now, those can be the same or different. The certificate authority is creating the certificate to pass to the VPN server. Then you have firewall issues, firewall configuration, both Amazon Web Services and Windows, possibly. Okay. Now, there may also be, I forget, but there's also a can be a firewall on this operating system. Ubuntu is an operating system just like Windows, and it has what's uncomplicated firewall, UFW. So it could be also in Ubuntu. Okay. Those are your firewall config issues that you've got to resolve. Okay. And then 3, you have to copy the config file, the maybe it's conf, I'm not sure. We'll figure out what that file name is, the ending of it. That file you've got to copy to Windows and to your cell phone. And once you've copied it to, say, your laptop, you can, an easy way to get it to your phone is to email it to yourself as an attachment. Email as attachment. Then when you go into your email on your phone, you see the attachment, you click on the attachment, and it says, assuming you've already installed OpenVPN on your cell phone, then it says, oh, this is associated with OpenVPN. Do you want to load it into that directory and or allow that, open it with that application is what it says, I think. You say yes, and it simply then just copies it into that directory, uses the configuration information, and then you're all set up to connect to your VPN server. And then it's simply a matter of pushing a button in your app, OpenVPN app, and it launches it. It connects, makes the connection, and it says connected. At any time, you can use this, assuming you're keeping your VPN server up and running. Okay. So a couple things that these are just, I'm just talking purely configuration here. But let's talk about security. Again, we talked about the security of with different types of tunneling protocols. Point-to-point tunneling protocol. There's secure sockets tunneling protocol. There's
IKE version 2.
Yeah, there's IKE version 2. There's layer 2 tunneling protocol, L2TP, with different ports required for each. And just as a reminder, and so we are going to, as part of this configuration, choose one of these. Now, what's made it simple is that lots of people want to do this. Now, you can go out and you can buy a VPN service and pay money, like a monthly fee, just like you would for your broadband internet access. And they would provide you a VPN service. But since we are computer scientists, we're going to create our own. We don't need to pay money. Ubuntu is an open source Linux distribution that is free. We have a free account on Amazon Web Services. And OpenVPN is an open source VPN software solution. So we are not spending, hopefully, any money on this. All right.
Sir, quick question.
Yes.
So we're not spending any money currently, but if we wanted to keep this thing up and running for the rest of our lives, eventually we would have to.
Yeah, if you kept this, well, remember your free Amazon Web Services accounts are free for 1 year. You can leave
Gotcha.
the server running for an entire year, never bring it down. And
After that point, then cost becomes a factor.
Yeah, then it starts to charge you. Yes.
Gotcha. Okie dokie.
Now depending what you're running, it could be as small as, a couple bucks. I ran out of money from Amazon, so I emailed them. I said, I'm an instructor, and they give me usually like $200 or something, and I go through that, and then when I need more, I ask them. So I got a bill for $1.28 the other day. Before that, I didn't realize it was $5. So it depends what you're running, but if you're just running a small VM and you're running this Openvpn server, which all this is free, the only thing you're leasing is just the VM resources, not any software resources. It can be very small. All right, this depends. So yeah, but you're right. You have this for a year, and you can continue to use this for a year, no problem. All right. So let me show the document. Okay, here's your project document that's on Moodle. View page width. Okay. So, and why did I choose these? Well, there's other different VPN services, and there's other different configuration installation instructions, but this is a simple one, and we have the ability to spin it all up with minimal cost. So at this point, it's free. So, all right, and then as we walk through this, yeah, there's another little thing here that it's called What's My IP? And so I forgot to mention, add that to your Word doc. So you got a snapshot of your laptop, of your phone, and then just a screenshot of What's My IP. So if I do What's My IP, okay, highlight it here because it's not wanting to go to this link. All right, and I go to this link. What's my IP here? This is my IP. All right, this is the public IP address from Comcast. Okay, and so what you do is you look at this 73.239.166.194, and over to the right, it says I am located in Olympia, Washington, right over here on the right here in the green area. Olympia, Washington. That's not my zip code, but that's pretty close. And that's pretty close. If I plugged in the latitude and longitude, I wonder how close that would be. But who it's assigned to, it's assigned to Comcast. And Comcast gave me that public IP address so that I could get out from my home. I'm at home right now. All right, and so what are those? If you take, you go to maps.google.com, and I plug this in. Let's see, I might have to do this.
Hey, you gotta use comma.
Comma there, like that.
Yeah, that should work.
Let's try that.
It's got to be negative. Negative 123. Otherwise, you're in China.
I'm pretty sure you're not in China, right?
That's better.
Okay, so it's not exact. Okay, I don't live right there in this lake, whatever this lake is. Okay, this looks like is that Steamboat Island? Oh, there's Steamboat Island. Yeah, it's going out there to Steamboat Island. Okay, So that's not where I live, but it's going to give some, I don't know why that location, maybe there is a Comcast
Yeah.
box.
That's a ISP routing point.
Okay. So that's interesting. It's out there on Steamboat Island or off of Steamboat Island Road there, close to 101. But maybe that's where it brings it in or whatever. Now, obviously, I'm more in Olympia, in here somewhere. So, but that is the point. That's pretty close. But it's Comcast IP address. So what's going to happen with this is when you create this VPN server, you're going to create it in Amazon, which is going to be in, I believe, it might be North Virginia, where it is, Northern Virginia. Okay. So then when you spin up your VM in the Amazon Web Services data center, you install Ubuntu and you choose Ubuntu, and then you go through the OpenVPN instructions. Then when you go into what's my IP address, it's going to give you the public IP address in Amazon Web Services of that Ubuntu server located in a different city. And therefore, when you go over here to the right, when you take a screenshot of this, it's going to say, region, Virginia, city, DC, whatever it's going to say. And then it's going to give, your zip code and another latitude, longitude. And that's what's going to happen. And then it's going to point you to another spot where that IP address is. And it's going to be the location of that, where that range is, basically, and who the company is. So it's going to be different. All right.
Hey, can I add some comments on it?
Yeah.
So like people get confused, like when a hacker has a public IP, they can find out where you located at, which one is your house or whatnot. But actually that is not true. Unless you hack into ISP, then they'll give that they have your address, but it's not accessible from the public. What hacker actually usually do is with that public IP address, they can connect to your handheld devices, like your smartphone, laptop, or something like that. And there is something called Leo, the geofence. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. And geofence, we're going to provide them your specific location. So revealing public IP address is dangerous, but it'll not going to tell you the address. So I just want to clarify, because a lot of people think like, hey, if you have public IP, I know your location or whatnot, but that is not true.
Yeah. It gave me that link over off of Steamboat Island, which is not close to me. It knows it's Comcast's IP address, but yeah, like I say, it's some type of cable feed or some box or something is right there, and that's where it's getting it to. So there's Comcast has given them that location, or they've created that from Comcast. And so yeah, you would have to hack into Comcast and then get my home address to truly get all the way to my house.
If that actually happened, then there are going to be big loads, I'm guaranteed. But that usually not happen. The happen is they direct into your device with their public IP and going through that way.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, that's an IP address that goes to a Comcast router, and they only know the address location of that. And even then, it's not my cell phone. Well, I guess it could be my cell phone. If I get an IP address, I'm on Wi-Fi at home. That would be the geofencing, right? But again, that IP address, yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Okay, so let's continue on. Now there is a this is called Digitalocean, okay, and I have put into this document here, all right, several. This is the one you're just looking at. We'll go back to it. Here's a link to it. Here's the one for 18.04. And why I did this for these is because I went to Amazon Web Services. And I went to the free tier only, right? I say I want to spin up a VM, and I click on this button over on the left that says free tier only because I want to do something that's not going to charge you. Yes, you have $100 credit, but you don't need to use that. So back to Raul's question, technically you can run this for free for a year. Then it'll start eating into your $100 credit. So maybe you get another year, maybe.
No, the $100 credit is the 1 year free tier. So as soon
That's
as you
part of the
run,
1 year too?
yep, that is part of the 1 year. So that $100, or if you use a free tier, then it'll eat up the $100 credit all the way down for an year. So statistically, that if you're using one of that, you can use it for 1 year. That's part of the $100 credit.
Ah, that's changed then. Because at the beginning, it was everything, these services, if you stay within the free, it didn't charge you. And then you still have that $100 at the end of the year. And of course, you're not in the free tier anymore. So stuff starts being charged, but you've got this credit. So that's a different change.
That's what I thought.
That extended it. That extended your year a little bit with the $100 credit.
Yeah.
Yeah, good to know. Okay. So when I say free tier only and I start scrolling down Linux versions, yes, you could do you could do OpenVPN on SUSE Linux. That's a free tier. But here you've got OpenVPN, the very latest OpenVPN. And this, so Ubuntu, their latest version is 20.04. Then they have 18.04. And you could find and use the setup, try and do it with Windows. But that gets a little more complicated. And so, and you should even have, there it is. Down here is 16.04. That was the original one I set it up on. And that one, if you set up on that one, the instructions are already built in to just run it, both a certificate authority, which generates your certificate for encryption and purposes, and the OpenVPN. Those are all together with these instructions. So I found these instructions a while back, as I said, with Digitalocean. Digitalocean is also a cloud service provider, but it's more of like a tier 2 or even tier 3. It's a much smaller service than Amazon Web Services or Microsoft's Azure, but it also has some, it's kind of a niche player for developers and so forth. But they have provided a lot of tutorials and different resources that are very nice. And so this OpenVPN, of course, they're thinking, well, you'll use Ubuntu and you'll use it on Digitalocean and you'll spin it up there and get it all set up. But I just always used Amazon Web Services because they have the free tier. But this is the instruction guide here, how to set this up. And it will slowly just walk you through. And if you walk through this and create this and spin it up, it takes sometimes around half hour, 45 minutes, assuming you don't make any mistakes. And you can get this file copied, which for some reason that becomes the hardest part of this whole thing, is copying that file, that config file, down to your client so you can use it on your laptop and your cell phone to make the connection to your OpenVPN server. Well, there's two elements to this. They're using, OpenVPN is using, of course, its own software, but to create the certificate that has the encrypted information in there, the encryption, the private certificate there, or private key in a hashed file with a bunch of other configuration options, okay? They use another open source software product called EasyRSA, all right? So EasyRSA is the other open source software that you're gonna install to create the certificate that you'll then use in OpenVPN with your server to create the encrypted session for your tunnel. And so these are the commands in these light blue, or is that gray? It has the commands. Now, you see when I come over this with my mouse, there's a copy button. See this little copy, this blue copy right here in this area? These are the commands within these windows. So instead of you typing in the commands, once you get to a command line, you literally copy and then paste it in, which is your right click within a CLI or command line interface in Linux. All right. And it'll just paste these in, because sometimes we fat finger it, we make a mistake, we don't type it in correctly. We're like, why didn't this work? And so each of these, one of these commands, you can just click copy, paste, and you're copying it in. And as you walk through this, you will first set up your easy RSA, and you will generate your certificate. You will install OpenVPN, and you will copy that information from easy RSA to your OpenVPN. That could be either on the same server or a different server. And even though this one here is going to be 2 servers, if you use the latest version of Ubuntu, you can still just, as you, the things that you're just basically being aware of is when they say, hey, copy this from this server to this server, the command is minus the actual server, okay, because it's on the same server, it's just a different directory. And so you just modify the command a little bit. So you just copy to the directory you need to, minus actually going between servers. All right. So word to the wise, or you can just jump back to this OpenVPN, and I don't have the link in for the 16.04, but you can just reach back into these tutorials and search for 16.04 OpenVPN. I need to do a 16 dot. Let's see. How to create an internet with OpenVPN on Ubuntu 16.04. So this is 4 years ago. How to set up, that's what you want right there, tutorial. So this one here, how to set up an OpenVPN server on Ubuntu 16.04. So if you're not using that, then you just select, okay, what am I using? Okay, am I using CentOS? Am I using Debian, Ubuntu? You select that one and they've got a tutorial for you. So then you just buzz on down through this, install it into your Ubuntu server, okay, and away you go. All right, so all of this is all well and good, except remember when you create this, okay, and you create your Ubuntu server, let's say you choose this Ubuntu 20, and you go in and you create this VPN, well, what will be a VPN, but now it's just an Ubuntu server. Okay, review and launch. All right, launch it. And you need that key pair. Do not forget that. Create a new key pair. If you say proceed without a key pair and you don't have a key pair, then you're in trouble because it's not going to work. You can't log in, which is secure shell to a command line interface. Ubuntu, this is my key. Download my key pair. And here it is for St. Martin's. And save. Launch instance. So when you launch this and it comes up, there's a couple things that you need to know about. And that one is the very first thing you probably should do is you need to open up your firewall. All right. The firewall is going to be key to allowing traffic in, which means you can go out, using web traffic, and you can come back in using web traffic. And ultimately, when you create this VPN, all right, you're going to have to open up that port or it's not going to connect. So that thing is running, but it's really status check, needs to go through the status check. It's spinning itself up. And so if I scroll down and I need now, let's go to this instance. And down here, when you go into the details on this instance, all right, down here it says security. All right. Here is my firewall, and it has nothing. Well, it has two things. It has inbound. The first is inbound rules. Okay, this right here, inbound, has to do with this group right here. Okay, so here's my inbound rules. I have port 22 for TCP, which allows me to create a secure shell to a command line interface to configure it. That's it. Nothing else. I can do nothing else. So, but then the outbound, that was inbound. Now this is outbound rules here. And when I highlight this, it flips that little triangle, but I'm going to flip it back. And I have one firewall rule right here. And it says any port, any protocol from any IP address, that's the all 0.0.0.0/0. So that's my Launch Wizard 2 security group here. So you don't need to add a separate firewall. It's built into Amazon. And right now it says everything is allowed inbound. So it's wide open coming in. So if I'm going to be attacked right now, anybody can, if they know my IP address, can try and attack my Ubuntu box. All right.
It's actually outbound.
But yes, that's right. They can come in, a packet can come in, but when it goes outbound, when it, when it comes inbound, I'm reverse. Everything is being allowed out from Amazon Web Services. That's outbound from the perspective of the software router here. Outbound, all is opened up, but only coming inbound is port 22. So that's coming into Amazon from the outside. Sorry, thank you. I was reverse. All right. So coming inbound, if I only got port 22, then I can only create a secure shell. So I need to add some other rules to that. And so that is the secret here, okay, to allowing this to work is this security group, okay, has to actually be modified. And I got a couple in there. So you sometimes got to write down which one it is, but yours will probably only be one. But when I get it in there, this is actually my back end. This is my this is my virtual private cloud. This is my back end private section here. Sorry, let me go back. Okay. Inbound rules. And this is their new, see up at the top, it says new EC2 experience. So it's got a new thing. So I need to figure it out here. Oh, here it is. Edit inbound rules over on the right. So here I've got inbound rules. And now I click on edit inbound rules. I got to add a rule. In this case, at this point, I really just need to communicate securely through a web browser, port 443, And I just do everything for now. And then I can save that. Ultimately, though, I'm going to have to add one more rule. And depending on what you select, could be a custom UDP, and it could be the port 1194. All right. And just say everybody. Okay, this is for my VPN tunnel. This is just web traffic. These are just descriptions. They don't make any changes. They just help me remember what it is. And this is secure shell. Secure shell. SSH. Okay. So I save these rules. And now I've got, and these other launch wizards, these other ones were ones that I had used previously, but aren't. So you have to, when you've got your EC2 dashboard and you have your instance running, which is still not running, it's still loading. That's why it said 0 there. 2 of 2 checks passed. EC2 dashboard, it should say 1 is running now, right here. It should say 1 instance running, but that is not updated for whatever reason. But yeah. And then when you go into instances, you see this one. All right, you can click on it. And you can see the information. But if you go to the actual security groups, all right. Yeah. So now it went to my Launch Wizard 2, and I can expand this so I can see this whole thing. This is when it was created. Launch Wizard 2 here. And here I've got a custom port 1194. This was already there, just so I could remote in. And then here is my web traffic. So the web traffic, that is going to allow me to install my apps in that installation guide. When you do this, when you go to the very top and you say, okay, sudo apt-get, these Linux commands say super user do application, or get the application, which in this case is update. It's going to update the operating system for any updates. It's kind of like when you do a patch update, check for updates with Windows. That's what this does. And the next one, sudo apt-get or super user do, which means do this as super user, so you have rights. Get the application and install Openvpn and Easy RSA. And it literally installs those. So it's just a command line that it's just installing those 2 applications. And if I don't have 443, to go to their website for Ubuntu, where they have these, or wherever you go to get these here, these applications, I'm not going to be able to go there unless I have 443 open. And then ultimately, when you create this tunnel and click on, connect, it's going to try and connect over 1194. And connecting over 1194, if you don't have that port open, and it's outbound because it's inbound because all outbound goes out, but your inbound is going to be blocked unless you have that port open. Now, if you change that from 1194, which you can when you do go through the config and it says, what do you want to use? Maybe you want to use TCP 443. Well, then you only need the bottom 2 lines on this inbound access control list in your firewall, Amazon Web Services, okay? or if you use some other custom UDP port, just put that port into the config and as you're configuring, and then just make sure you set this custom UDP port for that port in the Amazon Web Services firewall, which is called Launch Wizard something. Either it's default Launch Wizard or it's Launch Wizard 1, Launch Wizard 2, that's what they call it. But it's basically your firewall. It's a security group. Okay. Any questions on that so far? Is this making sense, the key elements that we've talked about?
It does, Mark. I do have a couple of questions. I was able, while you were going through the AWS sections there, I had to go ahead and kill whatever instance type I had started with, and I went back and noted that I had accidentally, when setting up an Ubuntu 20, clicked an ARM selection as opposed to, you know, the regular x86. And what threw me there a minute was in the instance types, it showed a whole bunch of different instances, of course, by necessity. So my question is that I'm assuming that in your example, you used a T2 or a T2 micro, which does show as free tier. I believe that's the only one that we're going to be able to do for free. I don't know if there's any other instances involved other than just the basic x86 versions. And of course, when Amazon refers to those, they call them, of course, those AMI images when you first start. So I blanked it, started from scratch, and noted that the only free tier eligibility when I chose the 20.4 apparently was only the x86 T2 micro. Now,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, you by default it goes to the x86, which is a Intel or AMD processor, 64-bit. The ARM that's a different architecture, lower power processor, but by default it's just a standard one there. And if you go select, you're right. Then it goes to, okay, what are your what's the actual?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
by
so you're,
default
yeah.
it highlights the free tier right there. T2.micro and one virtual CPU, 1 gig of memory, and that's plenty to run this, in fact.
Right. See, that's where I got lost, because the other side was like, only, you know, they were only giving you like 0.5, but you would have had to pay for that because it did, none of them indicated free tier eligible. So I appreciate the clarification that yours is on the T2 micro. That led to a second question, that once you go through and do some of your inbound rules and make some changes, how often, if ever, do you want to reissue your certificates?
Well, that's a very good question. And if you generate this certificate and you're the only one that has the certificate, you technically could keep this forever and never reissue it, so long as there's not an expiration date. But security best practices for companies who have a certificate like this, if I click on this and go to certificate, they have their own certificate. Let's go to something else. Let's go to us. Let's go to Moodle.stmartin certificate. So Amazon, so Peter, Amazon issued this certificate?
Yeah, we host Moodle on outside.
Oh
of
yeah,
St.
okay.
Martin's.
Okay.
So they have their
So
own
there
certificate.
are certain providers, and Amazon is one of those, but it could be what's my IP address? Let me look at this certificate. Okay, this one is done by Cloudflare. So this company, Cloudflare, issued by Cloudflare Inc. So you see how it's valid from 7/7/2020 to 7/8/2021. So it's good for 1 year. Do you see that right here?
Yep.
So with that, these there are large enterprise certificate providers for the internet, and they have a specific expiration date on their certificates, and you pay for it and it gets renewed, and sometimes it's renewed every 6 months or every year or whatever. But that's a service you're paying Cloudflare for. In this case, this website's using Cloudflare to provide their certificate for encryption for the HTTPS. And you don't have to regenerate it, but you could regenerate it if you wanted to for your instance from your Easy RSA server. So once it's Easy RSA, yes, you could regenerate that and then copy that back down and update it yourself manually. And best practices are that if it was compromised and people were trying to crack your certificate, which is just an encryption standard, whether that's AES 256 or whatever, 256 byte, then they're trying to crack that. And then if you change it before they have the chance to crack it, then of course, then they got to start all over if they're able to get it again. So that type of thing. So that's what you're doing, is you're constantly changing it, because these aren't completely secure. I mean, you can, over time, someone can get it and can try and crack it. And if they crack the encryption, then you would be compromised, and they would be able to see your traffic. And in this case, though, a tunnels the traffic inside, so the entire end-to-end communication stream is encrypted. But let's say you just had a secure communication to a website and that was cracked, then you could see what should be encrypted traffic. You could unencrypt it because you have the key, and then you could look at that. Now, if that was traffic, say, to Amazon, then you could look at the packets. If you were a man in the middle and were able to capture those packets, you could see maybe your password being passed through, or a credit card, or other things, and you could be compromised that way. So these certificates are changed periodically, and it shows you that when you go to that website. So yeah, there was this Microsoft. Did they may create their own certificates? No, DigiCert is using theirs, and see, in this case, for Microsoft's directory here, this is for the AZ900 Microsoft Learning.GitHub deal. DigiCert is issued the certificate, and it's good actually for, you see, 2 years, from 2020 to 2022. You see that? So it's different. It's not always 1 year. It can be different.
Perfect. Mark, I did have a couple of follow issues talking about the VPNs as we set them up.
Yeah.
There are some of us who have done, basic VPN stuff, and I've noted that with search engines like, the regular monster Google, there are certain applications and things that sometimes get thrown or don't respond well when you're using a VPN on top of them, and sometimes it's tied to them actually checking their own server pathways before they can validate or verify, certain things, or it simply delays them. The other thing would be for those of us who say, well, hey, I've got a laptop where I can set up an instance in one of the VM boxes. That seems to be self-defeating about setting up a VPN that will still locate you behind your own router. And the last thing, of course, is that some people have used VPNs for geographical, kind of invisibility. And the fact that you're going through AWS and so on gives you a little bit of that. But some of them, forgive me for saying this, in trying to prove that they're in Czechoslovakia, for example, they would choose an outside VPN service because they've got server clusters, globally. And then the last issuing authority, as Gary pointed out, could be from one of those areas that then makes it look like you're in Eastern Europe or you're in Afghanistan. And then you can then, according to the rules of that area, view certain materials or kind of activate that. So I wonder what your thoughts were on VPNs that may restrict your use of certain search engine tools.
Yeah, so if you have region-specific information that you can't get to because you're in a certain country and it's restricted for whatever reason, then you're going to be denied going to those websites or trying to access those services. And a VPN does, that term hides or obfuscates your location. So if you are in, North Korea, but you really wanted to look at YouTube, but it was blocked for whatever reason by the US government, then you could create a VPN tunnel and maybe you use something like this, and you were in Amazon Web Services in Oregon, right? Because my location is Oregon here now. So once I set up this VPN and tunnel in, it's going to think I'm located in Western Oregon. So then they can look at whatever cat videos they want on YouTube, and YouTube sees them as coming in from Oregon, because the packets that leave the VPN server to its final destination, the packet header has been changed so that the source IP address is the VPN server. That's what's hiding your location. Every packet then is changed, the header is modified, and the source is the VPN endpoint, that VPN server. So then you go to and you create some type of, you're watching some video on YouTube, and the packets come back to, are returned to the VPN. And the whatever location you went to, they don't know anything else but what's in the packet header, which is the source. So they send it back to Amazon. Amazon, of course, it goes to that VPN server. The VPN server, its job is it takes the packet, changes the destination server now, instead of itself when it's coming back, to the final destination, which is you at the other end of the tunnel. Sends it through the tunnel, and it gets to you, and of course you can see and do whatever you need to do. So that's what it's doing. It's converting the header to and from, and that's every packet has to be changed like that. And of course, it's also established and maintaining that established tunnel between itself, the server, and the client endpoint, and using tunneling protocols and encryption to maintain that tunnel as long as you want it maintained. And so that's its job. Yeah. So you're right. It does obfuscate or hide your location. And then there are issues sometimes when you are tunneling where certain things don't work. There is a delay in your performance, so there is some slowdown in what you're trying to get to, because there's some more overhead as part of this whole tunnel, but it's usually very negligible. And for just browsing or email or anything else, it's usually fine. So that's what you want to test out, though. Once you get this tunnel running, it's free and you can run it whenever you want. Kick it on and try to play a YouTube video, try and stream audio or video, get to your email, browse, and have it turned on, have it turned off, see what the differences is. So you'll see, maybe you run into a problem. If you have it turned on all the time from home, then you're going to be, of course, more secure where you're going. Your packets are all going to go to Oregon or Northern Virginia. You're probably going to go to Northern Virginia because you're part of the AWS Educate, and that is the data center you use. So you're going to be going to Northern Virginia and then out to the internet from there. But so that's kind of a big triangle. If you want to just get to some local website, it's got to go to Virginia, and from Virginia, it's got to shoot it back over here to, say, Seattle. Then it's got to go back to Virginia. Then it's got to be tunneled back to you. So can add some latency into the whole works. And you may find that you may see some specific apps that you run or websites you go to that maybe don't perform as they did or whatever. It'd be interesting to see the results of that.
That actually kicks me to, I'm sorry, Peter, you're way ahead of me. I was going to ask you about SMU's environment. Where does the student have to declare or deal with the idea that certain VPNs may not work when it's going through the Palo Alto here locally?
Should work fine.
Okay.
Yeah. No, the point I was going to make is if you did want to spend money and you spun up your server in, say, Tokyo or Frankfurt or something like that, don't be surprised when your Google results end up in German or Japanese, you know, because you're technically going from that location now. Everything appears as if you're in Germany or Tokyo. So
And
same
also
thing with your
realistic.
YouTube results. So
Yeah, another thing that realistically, when you actually go to trying to use PayPal or Walmart or like shopping website, they're going to alert because you used to use it in the Pacific area. All of a sudden, you're trying to attempt to log in from Virginia
East
or
Coast.
foreign country, then they're going to block you and call you, especially when you're trying to purchase something.
Yep.
And also at the same time, you can actually install the VPN on your router, depends on your router, the company, or you can actually have something called flash drive or the flash router that actually has built-in VPN on it. So those are the things that you might consider, but be mindful that they're going to catch you as fraudulent activity just because your location just dramatically changed within a day or within a minute.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's right. They don't, when you say, here, I'm going to send you a PIN for multi-factor authentication. And then they say, don't ask again, trust this website or trust this browser. What they're really doing is they're pulling information about the browser type, about your operating system, about your hardware specifications, and then that's stored, say at Amazon or somewhere else. He's right. And so then when you're coming in from somewhere else, they're like, okay, you're not coming in from your normal location. And that's possible to do that. But they also will say, hey, is this really Mark? So they got to go through the same thing. I'm going to send you a PIN so you can come in. Maybe it's your bank or something. This is your PIN number just to verify, because I don't know if you're at the library or if it's your friends or whatever, but I just want to make sure it's you again. So they'll do the whole multi-factor authentication, and you'll have to then get a PIN number sent to your phone, which then you got to plug in. And so they'll do that. And then sometimes that's just a quick check just to make sure it's still you, because you are effectively, they see you as being somewhere else. Yeah.
Mark, I'm just full of questions today. When you were showing the screens on going through the AWS console settings, I've noted that they have a review and launch button right away, but they also have a number of radio buttons, of course, where you can look at the details or configure. Would you be able to quickly share what you currently have your instance configured as?
Yeah, when you just do review and launch, that blue button at the bottom right there, then you can just review and launch, and it just takes this and launches it. But if you go to next, it's just the defaults number of instances. I only want to spin up one, not two. You could do two at one point if you want to have them the same exact. But then what's my network? Okay, this is your virtual private network you can create, or the default, and it's going to just default to the default. Subnet, I've got some in here that I've used in the past, and it's thrown it in there. If there's no preference, it just goes to the default, and then and you just use assign an IP address, and it is enabled. So you can say don't assign an IP address, because let's say I'm a database and I should never be accessed externally. So just for security, the only people that are going to access this database server in Amazon is going to be my front end web. Okay, so the front end web is going to connect to me, but it's going to connect on the virtual private cloud, which is my 172 net or something. It's an internal network or subnet. So that gives you an added element of security, because then your database server, which has your actual data, that's the most important thing with some type of application, is the data that's part of that solution, is not exposed directly to the internet. You could hack into the web server, and from the web server you could possibly hack into the database, but it's called defense in depth. But by default it gives you an internal and an external IP address, so a publicly routable and then a private one. to connect and talk to other VMs on your subnet there within Amazon. And then you can just go down, and you don't join a domain, but you could join a domain if you had a domain directory structure there. These are rights. You can create a different role there, and different CPU. By default, just shuts down, but you can select it. Hey, just terminate it. Enable hibernation as an additional stop behavior. Protect against accidental termination, like pop up another, hey, you sure you want to do this? And they've got some monitoring with CloudWatch, and then they've got some, you can do shared hardware instances, which is by default what virtualization is. You are on a shared resource, a hardware, a server that's a physical hardware server, and the underlying hypervisor is running, and then they have created multiple VMs running on that physical server, which is what they're spinning. They're spinning one up, and you're sharing those resources. The ones they've carved out for you are yours, but they're just a subset of the entire resources on that server. And there's other people with their VMs that are running on that physical server. And you can pay money and say, you know what? I want my own dedicated instance, right? Or launch this instance on a dedicated host. Okay, I want my own physical server. No other person or company is using the same memory space as mine. I want my own physical hardware, and you can do that if you want.
For security reasons, if you're in a high security environment.
Yeah. So all of these things, all these options, there's a price. That's the whole point, is that cloud service provider makes money by giving you these different option selections. Okay, and then metadata for monitoring enabled, and then you've got, yeah, that's pretty much it. So, and then you can do next storage. By default, storage for a Linux box is 8 gig, but for a Windows box, they give you 30 gig. It's interesting. They're both free on the free tier, but they'll give you 30 gig for the Windows box, but 8 gig of storage. It's a general purpose solid state drive. It's decent. It's not encrypted by default. And you can add more storage if you want, you pay for it, but then you add tags if you wanted to tag like web traffic, database traffic, or something like that. And then you got a security group. And this is where, by default, they just said, this is what you get. If you just say review and launch, you get one opening in your firewall for port 22, so you can remote in with secure shell and get a command line running. That's it. But of course, that's all you need to get going, and you can change that at a later time. But obviously, this self-service portal, you can go in and make whatever changes you want, and that's what we did. We already added elements. This is me installing another server right now. That's why you don't see all the rules I added, because this is a new machine. And then review and launch. It's going to review everything and then launch it. So, yeah.
Thank you. I had opened up some of the instances in the last year and then lost in it. I wanted to make sure that I was on the same page as a standard T2 micro that you just showed. So that's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, and when it's up and running, like in this case, I've got one server running now, and this should show 1 now. Yeah, it does. Running instance is 1. Volume, I have 1 volume for my server at 8 gigs. I have a number of security groups that I created in the past, but I could probably delete those. But by default, the default stays there. You can't delete that. But I go back in. Here's my server. If you're wondering, what am I running? Well, if you click on this instance ID, then it pops up and shows you all the details about it. It's running. This is your instance type right here, T2 micro. So you know which instance you have running. And you've got, here's your open address. This is your publicly routable. And over here on the right is your private address, 172.31 net address over here on the right. And here's your public address, and here's your private. And you can just copy those 2 little boxes. You can just copy those if you wanted to just ping it, or verify it was there, whatever. Okay. So, And then down below, it says, well, what is running on this box? I don't know. Well, here is the image. I have an Ubuntu 20.04 image that's running on this. That's the location where it is. Okay. Here's my key pair. If I forget, what was my key pair? Oh, I used Ubuntu key, not. And remember how I had St. Martin's, and I go in here and I was like, shoot, I've got a couple keys in here. I got this key pair and I got this key pair with, which one is it? Well, in here it tells me you need this Ubuntu key. That's how you log in using that key. And then you got these tabs up here to go through: security, details, inbound, outbound, firewall rules. This is the one I've already got existing. I didn't launch the other one. And you see I added those. And if you wanted some type of command here, if you wanted to edit these, you got to go into the security group and then modify those. Then it'll talk about networking, all the details for networking, only public and private IP addresses. And these are fully qualified domain names right here. If I type that into my browser, right, it's going to go to that. Okay, storage. Here's my storage. Here's my device location, dev SDA1. And I have 8 gigs attached and so forth. Monitoring. So yeah. And I don't think I selected monitoring, I don't think. So, okay. So that gets you on your way. And does everyone remember how, if you haven't done this, how you actually get into your box? You actually have to SSH to your box. So we ran out of time real quick, but if you need to get to that box, you go to the dashboard. I go to my running instance. It's running here. Okay, I need to actions. I want to connect to this. Okay, I got to click on it, I guess. Actions. I want to connect. How do you connect? Well, you can use an SSH client, session manager, or EC2 instance connect. So if you try this, let's see, connect instance, using any of these options. Now, if you do a SSH client, which is what I normally do, I use Putty, and Putty is this little app that's been around for forever. This is what it looks like, and I connect to it. And but if you haven't done this before, it'll walk you through it. Open an SSH client. In my case, Putty. Locate your private key file. All right, that's that PEM file, that .pem file that you've saved, and then you've got to change rights to it. These are using, I think you're getting to it from a Linux box, but you just simply connect your instance and you throw this command line in: SSH Ubuntu key PEM. You throw that in, and voila, you can go there from another Linux box. But if you're using something else, okay, you can learn about using other, okay.
Hey, Mark, but if I remember correctly, that you would have to change your PEM file to PSK file or something like that for
That's right.
Putty, right?
That's right. There is it's called PuttyGen. And PuttyGen, because Putty uses a different type of file instead of that .pem, you actually have to do a load. You have to load that file, and then you have to, so in this case, all files, this which one? Ubuntu key. I load that. I successfully imported it. And then I need to save the private key. And I don't need it. I don't need a passphrase. That just makes it more secure. And then when I go into this, and I want to just save with the same name, but what it'll do is it'll generate, here's the Ubuntu key, and I'm going to change it to PPK here. I'm going to remove this. So now it says Ubuntu key.ppk, save. All right, so then I close this. Well, if I look at in File Manager, here's what it started out. See, there's a Ubuntu key PEM, and it looks like this. All right. This is the begin RSA private key, end RSA private key. This hash has my password in there, username and password. Okay, it passes the hash. Now let's open up the other one. You see the difference here? I guess I should open up two together. Okay, see these two? They're just slightly different. They have a public element. They've broken out into the public, which is 6 lines. And then the private element of this RSA hash is the remaining. And it's just a different format that Putty uses called PPK is the extension there instead of that PEM file over on the left. So with that now completed, then I can go into Putty, point it to my Putty file, and get up and running with that. So if I took this and if I create one here, Ubuntu 20, this is just the name of it, 20.04, and I need the host name. What's the host name? If I go back here, this is the host name right here, public IP address. Okay, I gotta dump it in there. Control V it, home.
For that, you gotta, yeah.
Yeah, if you gotta go, go. I know it's I run over 5 minutes over. If you gotta run to another class, I'll just do this real quick, and we'll go over this again, so don't worry. And then the SSH, all I do is in auth, I browse to my PPK file, and I select that PPK, this one here, open, and then I save this session, save it as Ubuntu 20.04. I double click, and do you want to? You only do this one time, yes. And now I'm in. I am logged in. So anytime I want to, if I just kill this, okay, kill that session, but I want to go back in there, and I go into Putty, and I run Putty. Okay, here's Putty, and I double click on my Ubuntu 20.04 here, and I launch it. It just loads it in. Who am I? Well, I am the user Ubuntu. And from this command line, you can go through those instructions with DigitalOcean and just walk through your install. Okay. All right, thanks for holding on for everybody who did. And
Stop recording now.